Here we have a rogue trader, the namesake of the first version of Warhammer 40,000. None of the Warhammer editions since have had a name, and I feel that's something that needs to change. Now sadly you don't see many actual rogue trader miniatures, do you? There's the one lady with the veil on her head. I've totally forgotten her name. I believe she was in the Rogue Trader Kill Team box from a few years back, but I can't say I remember any others. Were there a couple in the Blackstone Fortress game or its expansions? I think that might be it. The outfit that this rogue trader is wearing is considerably more raggedy than the sort of thing I would expect them to wear. In my head, they would be wearing the finest garments and wonderfully expensive armour. Maybe these rags are fashionable where this guy comes from. Lowestoft perhaps. The rogue trader has one of the most interesting looking power fists or gloves I've ever seen. It looks more like a tiger claw or something. A little bit what Lion-O has in Thundercats. That probably had a name, but I don't remember it. But I bet one of you guys do though. The rogue trader's backpack has a lot of weird looking spiky details coming out of it. A little bit like lobster claws or something. They also look a bit like the hands of an old robot toy I had, a green monster transformer that turned into a car. I have no idea what the name of that was. Hold on a second, let me Google it. Okay, it was called Vamp, and it was a GoBot. Now although this rogue trader is an old design, I still think it's a nice one. It would be cool to get a miniature based on this piece of art. I think it would be a better miniature than the lady with a veil on her face, but that's just my opinion. My name's Marcel, and this is Snakeworks. Would you guys like to see some more actual rogue traders in Warhammer 40,000? Some more obscure, weird and wonderful things from the setting? I know I would. This next picture is really rather intriguing. Here we have a gentleman who appears to be fiddling with his gear, maybe doing a spot of cleaning or maintenance. After a bit of detective work, I'm happy to say I think the name of this chap is Worldburner. Well, that's his nickname anyway. He was released as part of one of the miniature lines a couple of months after the release of Rogue Trader. It was either mercenaries or adventurers or something like that. The way I was able to tell was because of his hat. See it there at the bottom right? He's wearing that in the miniature version. Now it might just be my odd brain, but it looks like Mr. Worldburner here is sitting on some sort of escalator device. Is he hanging out in an old factory in disrepair? Or is he hiding out in a mechanicum forge perhaps? Or is it just a ramp that looks like an escalator? Oh hang on, it might just be a spaceship access ramp. That might be the piston there beside it to raise and lower it. Mr. Worldburner here has a very interesting looking weapon. Are you able to tell what it is? It appears to have rectangular barrels, which is usually the style of either a Volkite or a Drathic weapon. Unless the barrel is on the other end. Any guesses, anyone? Laying beside our man is what appears to be a truncheon or baton weapon. It's interesting as in the tip it appears to have a speaker grill. Is this a microphone or is it perhaps a Bluetooth speaker for listening to while giving people beatings? Now Worldburner here also has some interesting tattoos on his arm. A number, a circular shaped logo and something that looks a bit like a Spider-Man symbol. None of these logos mean anything to me, but it's possible they do to you, so let us all know if you recognise any of them. So what you're looking at here are not some old Egyptian hieroglyphs or Neanderthal cave paintings. These are from an ancient alien race from the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Can you guess whose they are? Well, in case you didn't already know, these here markings belong to the Slann. How much these Slann are related to the Slann from Warhammer Fantasy, I do not know, but if you know, then please let us all know. Old-time 40k veterans and players will know that the Slann, or Space Slann as they were almost known as, were in Warhammer 40,000 at release, but only for a very short window, because as soon as it was released, they were gone again.
I'm not even sure if they ever popped up in 40k again after the main rulebook. Did they ever appear in any of the supplements? I don't think they did. Maybe they just got a name check somewhere. Now, in my notes, I had written down that the lizard Slann thing looks like a cat, but I've just realised the reason behind this is because it's wearing a cat's head as a hat. So it would look like a cat, wouldn't it? Maybe I was drunk when I wrote that. What sort of cat is that anyway? A cheetah? The little image in the top left corner is weird. It has some sort of power grid spikes coming out of it, a drill at the top, and what look like robotic flying pigs. Also on the left side of it is what appears to be a crab getting blown up. Oh, and Sonic and Knuckles on the bottom around the border. It's lovely. The bottom right image is also quite intriguing. This one appears to portray some type of giant lizard or crocodile attacking and maybe eating an unfortunate victim. Also laying next to them is a string of black beads. I wonder what those are for.
Now I know it's a little anal, but all these little glyphs and images remind me of those ancient aliens stories you sometimes see. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. You know those things? There was also some stuff on the news recently about some aliens and that whistleblower man, something to do with the US courts, and then it all just seemed to vanish. What happened with that in the end? Haven't heard anything about it for months now.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the USS Enterprise, its continuing mission to seek out new life, to boldly go where no man has gone before, or something like that. So, I'm 99% sure you all know what this is we're looking at. A spaceship. I'm not sure what else it could be. A miniature drone flying over a pool table, perhaps. That might look a little bit like a space scene, I suppose. Speaking of miniature drone spaceships, it also sounds a bit like the movie Inner Space. Now, I loved that movie as a kid, but I seem to remember it took forever to get going. But I think that was just an 80s movie thing. I myself am not the greatest spaceship expert when it comes to 40k lore and background, but I'm pretty sure this thing doesn't match any design we've seen before. Now, I suppose it looks a little imperial, but it doesn't have the cheese wedge shape. Maybe it's a squat ship. Have we ever seen what those look like? Now, I have a feeling here is that the ship is being shot at. We can see the beam hitting the side and a little explosion or debris or damage coming away from the blast area. Unless perhaps it's something inside exploding outwards at high speed. Maybe the captain left the oven on at home. Gotta go! Bye! Now again in my notes, I had written the spaceship has what looks like two fingers or toes joined back to back at the knuckle. It was a while ago I wrote it, and when writing this script I figured there must have been a typo there, or I was referring to another picture. But then I saw it, the middle of the bottom of the ship, upside down. It does actually look like two toes joined back to back. They even have the toenails and everything. I wonder what that's all about. Also, the big planet at the bottom looks like Jupiter to me. Oh, and the moon on the right looks like it has a belly button, or navel, as is the correct term. What we're seeing here is an orc having a little bit of a problem with his garden. He's stuck in the undergrowth. He's dealing with a large bush. Now this actually reminds me of my back garden back in the late 1980s. We lived in an old farmhouse with a huge overgrown garden. There were many thickets of weeds, nettles and thorns that always needed whacking. I spent a lot of my youth dealing with various bushes there. Amusingly, me and my friends used to get paid a small amount for whacking these weeds and doing this gardening. I remember my friend getting stung by bees, another friend falling into a huge patch of nettles, and us spending all our money on a delivery from the kebab shop. I fancy a kebab now. I haven't had one in ages, but I'm on a diet though, so it shall have to wait. Now the orc that's stuck in the plant appears to be using his weapons, a knife and a gun of sorts. I would assume to free himself from the plant's grip. But I suppose it's also possible he's attacking his enemy who might also be stuck in the plant somehow. We can see a random guardsman at the bottom right of the picture, so your guess is as good as mine on that one. The poor chap at the bottom even has one of the barbs growing out of his mouth. It gives you an idea of just how fast this stuff grows, piercing you somewhere and then growing inside you. It's spine tingling. So it turns out all this carnage is the result of a bio-wire bomb. I thought it might just be a tanglefoot. Maybe this is just the bigger version. I wonder how they make them.
Now sadly, we don't get any more weird and wonderful grenade types anymore, do we? It's mainly just frag and crack, with the occasional oddity here and there, like a psych-out grenade.
I have to admit, it took a little while for my brain to work out what was actually going on in this here picture. At first I thought it depicted a man standing up and challenging some sort of beast, but it's not that at all. So what I think is actually happening here is that the chap is landing the ship, bringing it down. He's holding what appear to be flares in each hand to wave at the ship, although the ship does look bloody weird and I don't think I would want it landing near me. The ship design is very strange indeed. It has the look of a demonic metal insect or something, maybe from the 80s Dune movie perhaps. I'm also getting the feeling that some old coin-op art had ships that looked a bit like this. Was it Gallagher or something? Yar's Revenge perhaps? I'm not even sure if this ship even has a pilot, as it looks almost alive, biomechanical even. I suppose it could be piloted by AI or something, like a hunter-killer from Terminator. I swear we bring those things up in every other video. What's the deal with that? The top of the spaceship has a weird mound with a little hole in the centre. This looks weird and biological. I wonder what this is for. Oh, and also on the front is what looks like another little face with a spiked tongue coming out. It's beautiful. It looks like something from Species. I really like this next piece. There's a lot of action and it's very busy looking. I suppose the proper term would be dynamic. So what we have here is a bunch of people, but not just any old people. These are what we referred to back then as the squats, or sometimes even the space dwarves. Nowadays they're known as the Leagues of Votan, and sadly it doesn't quite have the same ring to it. As is typical for a lot of Oldhammer 40k art, there's a fair bit of graffiti and slogan work dotted about. I can see War written on a squat's helmet, Zap gun on another squat's, I assume, las pistol, and LV vet at the top left. A reference to LV426, do you think? The squat in the background is carrying a bizarre looking weapon. The muzzle or tip of it looks a lot like the end of those long refueling lines that aeroplanes use when they refuel in mid-air. Perhaps this is an early conversion beamer or something. What do you guys think it is? There's one squat in the middle of the picture who looks a little more out of place than the others. To me it looks like he's got a flat cap on, the same sort my granddad used to wear. It's even got some badges pinned to it, and he's smoking a cigar. That's peak 40k art right there, folks. On the right hand side of the picture, on the floor between the squat's legs, are what look like eggs in the dirt. What sort of eggs are these, I wonder? To be fair, they do look a bit like generic chicken eggs, so they could be anything. They might even be the squat's breakfast.
Now, seeing all those eggs reminds me I wanted to make some of my own tyrannid nests with some big plastic eggs, like a giant Kinder egg or Easter egg. Would that look cool, or would that just look silly, do you think?
Our next picture again portrays some more squats. I know a lot of you like these guys. I know I myself was always a fan of them. I don't know why, I just thought they looked cool. I never really managed to do much with the squats over the years. I think I've painted 1 or 2 miniatures and started building an army for the old Epic game back in the mid-90s. I didn't buy much past the squat plastic box and a couple of the Iron Eagle gyrocopters. Those things were awesome. Still not as cool as the land train though. Remember those? Now I think I was a big fan of all these squat vehicle designs thinking about it. Were there any that were not so hot? Was the Cyclops a bit overkill with that huge cannon? Was the Overlord armoured airship just a bit too much of an airship for the 40k universe? I don't think so. They were wonderful miniatures. The squat standing there in the middle has possibly the largest pair of sunglasses ever seen on a humanoid. Look how big they are. I wonder if you can get a pair like this from Claire's Accessories. And does that shop still exist? It was big in the 90s. In this picture, we also have the return of some more Rogue Trader era graffiti, this time on the squat's helmet. Although a little hard to make out, it does say, "May the dark be with you." A little play on "May the force be with you," perhaps. Now something else in the picture that can be a little hard to make out is the reflection of a space orc in the squat's visor. I think it's a cool looking detail. Imagine trying to paint that on an actual miniature. I don't think I've ever seen that done before. Alrighty then, what we're seeing here appears to be a man of some description. Is he a space marine? Is he a mercenary? Nobody knows. Well, I guess the artist probably does. Our man here has some interesting looking lines on the side of his face, some elongated rectangles. To me, they look like he's glued matchsticks to his face, but I guess they could just as easily be tattoos or something. Although this gentleman has a lovely mohawk, it also looks like he's starting to lose a bit of hair on the sides of his head. It looks less shaven and more bald. Although that could just be the way it's drawn. If I ever start going bald, I'm going to use it as an excuse to have a mohawk now. This geezer has a strap over his shoulder, which I assume is attached to a man bag or satchel. Nothing new there. However, the strap does have some weird looking bobbles on it. Usually these things are on shoulder pads. I'm not sure what good they would be on a leather strap. Perhaps they're just decoration, or his Pokeball collection. Our man here also has some of the hairiest shoulders I think I've ever seen in a piece of artwork. Do people refer to these as Wookiees? I think the captain or colonel or general guy in Alien Resurrection also had shoulders like these. It's very macho. The pose of this chap looks like he's disgusted or really doesn't agree with something that's been said. I can fully imagine him sounding like Lister from Red Dwarf, shouting, "Get out of town!" I think I might have messed that accent up.
I do miss Red Dwarf. It was probably my favourite TV show growing up. I thought it was really good. Now, speaking of really good things, if you're enjoying this video, then please consider liking it and subscribing to the channel. That means you, Dave. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, then please consider joining us on Patreon, the link to which is in the description below, or up here somewhere. Or you could even become a channel member, which is becoming all the rage these days. Again, there's a link to that in the description below. Anyway, that's enough e-begging. Let's continue on.
This here piece reminds me of a scene from a western. I think it's the general layout of a dusty track with wooden buildings either side. Yeehaw indeed. Apparently the reason this place looks so bizarre is because it's closed off from the Imperium for extended periods of time by local warp storms. It might be just inside the Eye of Terror, but I might also be misremembering things. On the right hand side of the picture is what I think is a squat wearing a Batman t-shirt. Who knew Batman would be a thing in the 40k universe? It is, however, also possible it's a piece of Night Lord's memorabilia. Can you imagine that? The Marines giving out t-shirts and merch after they finish their battle. Crazy, but awesome. Oh, and if you're wondering why Night Lords, it's because their original logo was just a bat, not a winged skull. Walking down the middle of the track is a young lady walking a pet lizard. It looks a bit like a baby raptor or Yoshi from the Super Mario Bros. Movie with Bob Hoskins. I remember first setting eyes on that Yoshi and thinking, what on earth is that? Also, back in the 90s, we used to pronounce it Yoshi. It was later we found out it was Yoshi. Down the street is an establishment that appears to be called Bob's Country Bunker. I wonder what that's supposed to be. A cafe? There's far too many cafes around these days. I noticed this when we wanted to go out somewhere nice for dinner. It's all cafes, coffee and crap, but no actual nice restaurants. What's that all about?
Some wonderful artwork there. If you want to see some more Oldhammer style artwork, then check out the playlist up here somewhere. And as always, thank you very much for watching.